All right, guys, good morning. Happy Friday. Figured I'd knock out another video before I went and started a job. So this video, I kind of wanted to talk about the specifics on what to look out for if you're in the market for a Gen 2 or a Gen 2.5 Tundra from 2007 to 2021. This is gonna be more in like kind of in-depth or detail outside of like, your basic, like, check the Carfax, inspect the brakes, that kind of stuff. This is just more specifics. So first, if you don't know, obviously these are extremely reliable, but like everything, nothing's perfect. So these are notorious, not notorious, but it's pretty common. You'll see the, you'll see on the forums or if you're searching places, the cam tower seals, leaks, and seepage along with the timing covers. So if you get to a truck and you kind of want to check it out, I'll kind of show you the spots to check. Same thing what I did. Down here is a pretty common spot where you'll see a lot of seepage. There's a point where the cam tower meets the block and it'll kind of seep out of there, and this whole area will be kind of covered with oil. Mine doesn't have that present. This side's a little harder to see, but you can check here too. It's really, you want to go to your fenders, wheel wells, and check all along here. See, you'll see possible seepage here, which I don't have any, but I'm just showing you guys. Sometimes in the back, sometimes in the front. It's a big job if somebody wants to pay the money to do it. And me personally, I don't think it's worth spending the money unless it's a really bad leak. If it's just seepage, just clean it and keep pushing. Same thing on this side. You want to check. Like I said, I don't have any present, but it's a good idea to look, You might be able to use it as a negotiating factor if you're trying to buy one of these trucks. There are guys on the forums that are able to kind of temporarily or permanently fix some of the seepage from the big spots. They'll clean it out and they'll put like an exterior type like sealant or something. I've seen a few guys do it and they talked about talking about it working. Something to know, but just letting you guys know, it's not going to cause the engine to fail or anything like that. It's just, these are notorious for the famous cam tower oil leak seepage. Mine's a 2020 with 105,000 miles. I don't have any leaks. It doesn't happen to every single truck. Next, while you're in the engine bay, these water pumps generally don't fail prematurely. When they do start leaking, it's obviously noticeable. Outside of going underneath the truck to check, you can check the front. It's a pretty straightforward job, even though it might look confusing. Check from the top, from the bottom. If it's got a skid plate, you can kind of sneak in from either side and just check. But that is also related to the coolant. Now, the coolant I want to talk about. In 2014, they changed the head gasket design. And that's because if an older truck, and you see it, if it was kind of neglected with not having frequent coolant changes, because coolant breaks down over time and becomes acidic, these would start kind of eating away at the gaskets, and you'd start having some head gasket failure, potential overheating, yada, yada, yada. So if it's pre-2014, you definitely want to check when the coolant's been changed. It's very important that coolant's changed. It's obviously still important also too for the 2014 and up too, but that's one thing to know. And then another thing you'll see, which isn't talked about too much, but it's a big intensive labor job as well, is the infamous valley plate leak. So underneath the intake manifold, you have a valley plate where a whole bunch of coolant collects and then it goes through the entire motor. If this leaks, which you can't physically see it, the coolant underneath the intake manifold will start kind of crusting up, and generally doesn't ever go through the front. It always goes through the back, and it's going to run down the transmission housing. It's generally on the passenger side. Rarely you see it come down on the driver's side, but that's something to note. So an easy way to check for that is obviously check your coolant, check the coolant level. If it's low, don't be alarmed. Go take it for a ride. It should ride a little bit. If not, note it, right? Go underneath the truck and check on the passenger and check the driver side by the transmission housing. If there's any pink coolant kind of running down from the top, you'll know that there is a valley plate leak present, and then take note if you're looking to buy that truck. All right, let me check my list. Rear diff, I've talked about it. These rear diffs are really solid, but a quick, what I did is, mine obviously has the rear diff breather relocation, but there's gonna be a nipple not a hose. Check that, see if that's crumbed up. You're gonna wanna check underneath where the axle meets by the brakes, see if there's any seepage or anything. Just make sure your axle seals aren't leaking. So another thing to look out for. Also, I'll note on these trucks, you got obviously U-joints. I think in 2018 or 2019, they phased out the U-joints, and they became like lifetime, so they don't have jerk fittings. So if it's a 2018 or older, you want to check all your U-joints. There's, I don't know, don't quote me on it, maybe 13 or 15 of them, because you got a front and the middle. So check those, see if they look like they've kind of been serviced, because they should be pumped with the grease every oil change. So another thing, note the U-joints, check for play. You know, it might be present when you're taking it for a test drive if there's any vibration. Also, if you're going to take the truck, you put it from reverse to drive and you kind of get a clunk in the rear. I'm assuming, you know, these trucks you're looking at aren't like crazy lifted or whatnot. The slip yoke on these trucks, which is on the rear drive shaft, is not greasable. The grease dries out pretty quick from the factory. Then over time, it eventually creates like a clunk. So there's a boot there. You can disassemble it, remove the rear drive shaft, and you can grease up the slip yoke and then put a new clamp on the boot and put it back, and it should be smooth. But just another thing to note. Now, another thing with these trucks is obviously they were available with flex fuel and not flex fuel. So if you're looking online before you go look at the truck, you can check the VIN number, and you got on the 5th digit, it'll either be a W or a Y. If it's a W, it's a 3UR FBE, which is flex fuel, and if it's a Y, it's going to be a 3UR FE. In 2020, they got rid of all flex fuel. So easy way to know. And now why I say flex fuel, not flex fuel, is some people will have issues with starting, intermediate problems, and that's usually the fuel density sensor needs to be reset for the alcohol density. And a lot of people will spend big money on a fuel pump module, you know, ECU or whatever, and most of the time it just needs the fuel density to be reset. So that should just about cover everything. There's a lot more, like, you know, obviously look at your brakes, look at everything, check everything, make sure the truck, you know, drives good. These are really great trucks, but those are kind of specific details on what to look for if you're looking for one of these Tundras. So hopefully it was helpful. If you got any questions, feel free to comment, ask me. I do my best to respond to everybody, but hopefully you guys have a good day and take care.